Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. I seem to have a bit of feedback here, and I can't figure out why. But I am going to continue. I am on the radio with Thomas Ackerman. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is, hey, Tom.
Good morning, Lonnie.
Good morning. You know what, Tom? I have asked Tom to join us today for the radio show to have a co-host. I thought it might be more fun to have a co-host on the Call-In Fridays, since Fridays is our Call-In Friday. And I have a lot to talk about because things are going on in our country and on the news that make my jaw drop, I have to say. So welcome to the radio show, Tom. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for calling me up this morning. I just got in the studio right now, and
here I
it's
was.
unexpected, but I'm ready for anything today.
Well, I thought I'd do a little impromptu thing. Otherwise, it might turn into a Bernie rant. I know you're Canadian, so it'll keep me from venturing too far down that rabbit hole. So
Bernie.
Yeah, I personally feel that he's like, if we have any chance at all, it's going to be with him. I mean, the violence, I was just reading some headlines that says the Republicans are entered their fifth stage of grief with Trump grief, which is acceptance. Which, that's a headline in the United States, for real.
I like it, yeah.
Some guy on a social media thing said Americans aren't, when we're talking about Bernie, they said, Americans' ears are plugged with crayons. And that was like such a great phrase. It's true. They are plugged with crayons. And so if any of the listeners here, let me give out the number because I know there are some Trump supporters in our listenership. And I would really love to talk to them and ask them how they could vote or even think that a man who pays for lobbyists and is a complete bigot and a racist would make a good president. I personally, as a female and somebody who has supported social rights, definitely do not want to take it. Although, I will say this, he's better than Monsanto Clinton. So let me give you guys the number. It's 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. And this is the Age of Fission radio show with Lonnie Clark and my guest host, Thomas Ackerman. And today is Call-In Friday, so please do give us a call, and you can talk about anything that you want. 718-717-8296. And one of the reasons that I thought about calling Tom this morning, and frankly, thank you, Tom, for being so generous and being impromptu with me on this one. I saw a headline that I don't really understand the dynamics of this. I've heard about it. FAA investigated 2 emergency landings at Philadelphia International Airport And then 11 found dead after helicopter crash off of West Norway. And I immediately thought about what Radchick has said about the Wigner effect. I have followed her with her reporting on the Wigner effect for about at least a year and a half. It's about as long as I think I've been conscious of it. So
she seems to be right on her the exposés she's done. She's done a major work on it. It's up on YouTube, Radchick, on the Wigner effect, where basically it's neutrons that collide with atoms in any structure, like a crystal structure or like metal, anything like that. Neutrons collide and weaken the structure. And of course, planes are very susceptible to these neutrons. And there is a relationship to chain reaction. These elements that are produced in chain reactions in nuclear plants, and now Fukushima, these elements are just thrown out of this plant every day all over the place, and they end up in the atmosphere, and planes go through it. So,
and it affects them. So listen, Tom, I kind of want to give you some information here. Because it's Call-In Friday, if someone calls me in, I'm just going to, we may be in the middle of a conversation, and I'm just going to answer the phone and interrupt ourselves because I want to give our listeners an opportunity to join in. We just had a call that I ignored a little bit too long, and they stopped calling. I'm hoping that person will call back, and I'm actually kind of hoping that it is a Trump supporter, because I am dumbfounded that anybody in our country, to me, it's like voting for Clinton. I don't know how you can separate the two. I actually heard, and I read it on the internet, and I don't know if it's true because, who knows if it's true, that Bill Clinton visited Donald Trump the night before he declared his candidacy. And before I even read that article, I've always believed that Trump joined the fight, the political race, to help Clinton get elected, because he's so horrendous in his, wobbliness. Like, he used to be for this, and now he's not. And now he's talking about the wall and just spewing his hate and misogyny all over the place while telling us that he's a good guy and putting, so just kind of blows me away. So I hope I do hear from somebody who can explain to me his appeal. So
I'm not a big follower, other than what
here is someone. So
okay,
maybe
go ahead.
This is someone. Hold on. Hey, they dropped off. Hello, this is Lonnie Clark on the Age of Fission radio show. Who am I speaking to?
Good morning, Lonnie. Good morning, Lonnie. This is Michael, your favorite angry, violent listener.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, you called
Ackerman,
me?
are you aware of this? Of Michael? He's my.
Is it safe? Is it safe?
Yeah, I don't know. Do we live in anything safe? Michael has called in a couple times and said that the elections are for shit, and really what we really need to do is just violent revolution, right, Michael?
We need to burn everything down. That's the only way to get any kind of attention. But you had asked about Trump,
Yes.
and I'll tell you, Trump is the biggest and most visible, none of the above vote ever. Anybody who truly believes he's going to build a wall are the same people that kind of thought that Obama was going to give them, give them free rent and give them free food and give them health care and all that. It's all a scam. The Trump thing is just a none of the above vote.
What do you think of Bernie Sanders?
Bernie Sanders is 30 years in Congress. He's one of them. He's 30. He's been a senator, and he's been some sort of political.
He was a mayor
employee.
and a congressman he was a congressman for like 23 years, and then he became.
Yeah, he's one of them. Yeah. That's. Yeah,
I mean, this is why I actually prefer him over everyone. He has been an independent. He has voted against everything.
He's worked within the system. He's worked within the system that we are currently fighting against for 25 years.
Yeah, but we all work within the system. This is what I don't understand. Like, we are all living in the system. You can only work within the system. We live in the system, and we work within the system. So
I can't get behind an avowed socialist who benefits from having worked within the system for 25 years. And on top of that, he's bad at math. I mean, the one true language of the world, of the entire universe, is math, and he's bad at it.
That's actually incorrect. His programs have actually been vetted as being financially sound. That is not a correct statement. His math is actually accurate, and in my view, he has actually voted against every single wrong decision he has been working inside.
He's voted for every war that we've gone to. He voted for the Iraq War.
That's not true. He was the only person who voted against it. Look his record up, Michael. Look his record up. He was the only person who voted against it. He was the only senator who said no. He did not vote for any of these wars. He's the only, and that's why he's been an independent. He basically said, you know what? He has been on the side of the Democrats. You know, when you're in the Senate or in the Congress, you have to, you have to like caucus on one. If you're only an independent, you have to caucus on one side or the other. So he caucused with the Democrats, but he did not vote for the Iraq War. He did not vote for the Patriot Act. He did not vote for the NDAA. He is anti-nuclear. He is the only person who is actually talking about slowing the train down.
You don't stay in Congress for 25 years if you do not toe the line. And I'll give you Cynthia McKinney as an example. Cynthia McKinney went up against the Israeli lobby. She said that you don't get anywhere in Congress unless you kiss Israeli ass.
That's actually true, and I will give you that
She was out the next election.
I will give you that one. I know Cynthia McKinney's. I've followed her quite avidly. I'm a huge fan of Cynthia McKinney.
So in my mind, Sanders is just. I mean, he's Coke Light, Diet Coke. You know, it's still a product of the Coca-Cola Corporation. It's still made of fetal kidney tissue or whatever. He's just a new label on the can.
You know what? I am going to obviously I disagree with you, and this is why, because he has actually, if he was really Coke Light, why would the Democratic Party be sabotaging him so severely? I mean,
because he's not the right one at the right time.
Well, he's not the right one for them, period.
Well, he's the chosen. He's not the chosen one right now.
Well, he's not a Republican. The fact is, Hillary Clinton is a Republican. Like they're not. No,
we're playing into the left-right paradigm, which is absolutely fake because there's no difference between either of the two parties. The only difference is one wants everybody to have abortion and the other one wants everybody to have guns. Otherwise, it's the same thing. If you really want to get into it, look who gets the money from Goldman Sachs. Ted Cruz, his wife is a Goldman Sachs banker.
Yeah.
I have a question for both.
Go ahead.
Michael, can I ask you a question?
Sure, I'd love it.
Okay. I'm Canadian, so I mean, politics up here is not as intense, I think, as it is with down south. But
no, you guys have like 3 weeks of election. We have like a year and a half.
Exactly. It's like a bunch of chickens run around and one of them gets, skewed. Anyway, there's like a feeling I have, though, about politics that in the U.S., there is this real amazing focus always on an individual person. Like you have the president, and it's like the end all and be all, make it or break it kind of thing. And I'm sort of feeling what you're saying about when you're in the system for 30 years, something's got to rub off here. You're not just.
I think if they're in there, they're a part of it. They can say whatever they want, and they can vote however they want, and they can make all these grandiose stands that are wonderful on paper. But they're there for 25 years. They're there for 30 years.
So my question,
something to stay there.
Okay, my thought on this though is that why do we continuously focus on these individuals with such force? I mean, yes, it's part of this organization. It's like,
we're a nation that loves our superstars.
Okay.
You may not know every player on the Denver Broncos, but you know the quarterback. I'm sorry, say that again?
I think that idea that we love superstars, I mean, this is one of the things that Bernie's campaigns he talks about. It's like, it's not about him, it's about all of us. The idea behind his campaign is for us to stay actively engaged in politics and make a difference. Because part of what he talks about at his rallies, which are never covered, is that it's up to us.
I think Bernie's getting the shaft.
Oh.
Believe me, I think he's getting
Well,
the
he
shaft when
has
it
the
comes to
right
this thing.
message, because what he's asking people to do is get actively engaged and not make it about the superstar. He says to them, look, you can elect me, but unless you stay actively engaged and you put pressure on your elected officials to change things, it's not going to get changed, because even if I am president, I can't do anything without you putting pressure on everybody else in the government. That's the first time I've heard a message like that in a long time, where a political candidate says, we need you to stay actively engaged.
So if that's the message
Let me
that you're
get back
really
to my
enjoying,
second point about this before. Trump is not an outsider. He has been paying lobbyists for a long time. He is an insider.
Absolutely. He's an insider in a completely different way than the other ones are insiders. And that's what, in this low information nation that we live in, the nation that I pledge allegiance to the Dancing of the Stars, he is an outsider because he's not been there for 30 years. And anybody who does any kind of research will realize that, number one, Trump donates to both sides of the aisle. Trump is a businessman. If you really want to get into it, Trump's a sleazy businessman. He bankrupted 4 casinos. That's a skill right there.
He did not earn his money. It was given to him. He is an inherited trust fund baby with a spoon in his mouth since he was born. That's the other thing.
But they all are. They all are.
No, Bernie Sanders is not. That is not true. Bernie Sanders is not rich. I mean, this is where
Bernie Sanders is sitting on $750,000 in his bank account. Now, that, to me, is rich. If you've got $750,000 sitting in your bank account, that means you're rich.
Well,
there was just recently a study that said that like 72% of Americans could not come up with $400 right now if they had to pay for medical care or something. They could not physically come up with $400. So Sanders may not be, mega wealthy. He owns his own helicopter, but he's sitting on $750,000, and the government flies him wherever he wants to go.
I think that you have some misinformation. I'm going to look this up because this is the thing, and I get, this is my feeling about the whole election. Even when Bernie Sanders wins, everything inside of government is going to crush everything that he wants to do. Because even if we all did by chance,
if you feel that way about Sanders getting elected, that it's going to be massive gridlock, what do you think would happen if Trump got elected? Do you think that there's going to be a wall? Hell no. Hell no. There's not going to be a wall. It would be massive gridlock. It would be gridlock like we've never seen before. Trump could say that the president declares that water is wet, and the Democratic coalition would come up and say that, no, water is not wet. We find it to be a little bit dusty. And then somebody from across the aisle, the Republican, would say, we're going to have to step up in bipartisanship and agree that water is a bit dusty. No, it's a lie. It's all a great big scam to keep your eye off the biggest problem that's coming down the pipe. The dollar is about to crap the bed.
That's actually true. You know what is funny about that, Michael? When we heard that lady Margaret Tubman's going to be on the $20 bill, I thought, when they put a black woman on a $20 bill, the dollar bill's about to crash.
It really. I mean, there's been so many jokes about that, and they're almost kind of funny. But then you almost have to get into what's the mindset behind that, knowing that. Racial tensions, quote unquote, in this country are at an all-time high. And really they're at an all-time high because the mainstream media is pushing it. I mean, this morning CNN was talking about how Trump was busy throwing, aborted black fetuses into wood chippers and, trying to sell that to somebody for, profit for his golf course or something. Racist. He walked by a dude in the KKK one time and didn't punch him. He's just a horrible racist. Now on the same side, you've got Hillary Clinton, who mouth kisses Robert Byrd, who spoke at his funeral.
Right,
He's Grand Wizard KKK.
Right.
The KKK actually donated $20,000. The real KKK donated $20,000 to Hillary Clinton. Now that might be a scam or something, but there's no mention of that on the big news.
Yeah.
So I think that Trump is a pressure valve. in reality, he's a great big none of the above vote. In the same way that Sanders is as well, but it's for a different crowd. In the end.
So in your scenario, then you're foreseeing some major financial catastrophe, because the dollar, what you call the dollar, is what is called the reserve currency, and it's basically the choice of currency on the planet. So if that goes, we're looking at mayhem pretty well everywhere.
Absolutely, well, definitely in the United States, and I mean, and there's logic to back this up. We've got the recently in our news, there's been a whole bunch of stuff about the 28 pages of the 9/11 report that have been, missing for 15 years. It's been, it was too great for national security. You couldn't touch it. Those 15 pages pretty much put finger on Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is our largest trading partner. There's plenty of pictures of George Bush and Prince Bandar like hugging and kissing in a completely non-homosexual way, in accordance with his religious views and all that, blah, blah, blah. So Bush and Saudis are really, really tight. Why are they putting out these 28 pages, which are going to implicate and put Saudi Arabia at the middle of the 9/11 thing, where we already went and bombed the hell out of Iraq and Afghanistan? And then put that together with the fact that the Saudis are now actively pursuing nuclear energy technology to wean themselves off of oil dependence. Yeah, the dollar shit the bed. It's done. We just ain't got the receipt yet.
It's been done for a long time. I was listening to an interview on SGT with Sean. He interviewed a guy called Bill Still, who said the dollar has been in trouble for a very long time, and but it keeps going, and he's convinced it's not going to end because there's no alternative.
Well, there's plenty of alternatives. It's not going to end until it's impossible for it to keep on going on by people actively resisting it. And that's why we're looking at a war with Saudi Arabia. Because the only thing better than wonderful times and cheap oil for the petrodollar is a war.
And war is good for profits. Let's be clear. Both sides.
Wars have to be financed.
Yeah.
You got to get a really, really good loan to go out and buy some depleted uranium bombs.
So, Michael, I hear you saying that you think the reason that these reports came out is so that we could position ourselves to make Saudi Arabia the enemy?
I think that's exactly it. And then at the end, you really kind of got to get into the fact that, like, on the day of 9/11, there was only like 5 arrests made that day, and they were all Israeli citizens. They weren't any of the 19, 15 of the 19 Saudi hijackers were Saudis, but the only 5 people they arrested for anything to do with 9/11, like in the first month, were Israelis, and then they shipped them home like, oh, they're our friends. We can't talk about them.
Oh, my God. I have to go back here, Michael. This is hilarious. While you said that Bernie Sanders was super rich, $750,000 sitting on his savings account, do you know that's in a government retirement savings account?
How much do you have? How much do you have in a government retirement?
Well, I don't participate in that, but there are millions of government workers who do. And for any of these,
I know some government workers, and I'm gonna bet you not a one of them has $750,000.
Look, many of them, I do taxes. I have lots of clients who have retirement accounts. Many of their retirement accounts are 300. Many.
But it's still a servant.
Yes.
This is a dude who's supposed to be making maybe $60,000 a year.
He is. And that's what happens when you have a retirement savings account. If you've been doing the retirement, the rule of 72, how your money doubles. He's an old guy, so his money, that's why if you look at the reports, she said she claimed 225 to 750 because it's all invested in the stock market. So this is the high in the last 3 years. This is the low. So, this is a far cry from me because in a government savings account, you don't have control of the assets and you don't have control of the income. You cannot just say, hey, I want my money, or you get dinged pretty hard. So,
yeah, you take like a 15%.
But this is what I'm saying. Like, we have to have clear conversations about what that really means.
I'll go with you on the clear conversation. Let's talk about something you said. And I'm not defending him. Believe me, I'm not necessarily a fan of Trump. I see where he has his place, and I don't think he's the best, but I don't think he's Hitler.
Are you going to vote, Michael?
Probably not. I'm really fairly disgusted with this system, and honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I vote. It doesn't matter if you vote. What if we all get together and everybody 100% in the United States votes for Sanders, or everybody 100% votes for Trump?
The fucking
Hillary's still going to be in.
They would still. No, I disagree. They cannot steal an overwhelming amount of people voting. They cannot. That's exactly what happened in the last election with Romney.
They absolutely can, because the individual vote doesn't matter because of the Electoral College. It has no bearing on anything if you or I vote. And I'm not talking because we're insignificant or it's an infinitesimal, like a drop in the ocean. It's the system says that my vote doesn't count.
Well, it's like Ron Wyden. We haven't even had our elections here in Oregon. He's already promised his delegates to Hillary Clinton. In fact, every senator has promised. But this is the reason that it matters, because there is so much pressure now that some of these senators are starting to think, well, if I back her, maybe I won't get reelected. So this is the point of democracy. Like, part of what they want us to do, and now I'm talking about the bankers, the people controlling the economy, they want us to believe our vote does not matter. This is why in the last election, we had, in the 2012, when the teabaggers got into office, we had less than...
Why would you say teabaggers? Because those are just people who are equally as sick of the system as you from a different perspective.
You know what? I call them teabaggers because I think that they are hateful people. Many of the people that run in that Tea Party are bigoted, hateful, hypocritical Christians, in my view. That's my complete opinion. I'll just tell you that. And I don't think that some of them are horrible people. Like, I have friends that are teabaggers. I love them. But their political views are bigoted and racist and misogynistic, and we have conversations.
Do you think that holding a nationalist view is wrong?
No. I mean,
a nationalist and an isolationist view. Let's go with that.
I am an isolationist. I think we need an isolationist attitude. And I am, for goodness sakes, about how nationalist can you get? I help people with their taxes in our country. You know what I mean? I'm not like anti-tax.
Right.
So
no, you got a belief in the state system, and this is your country.
Yeah. Definitely.
Would that be fair to say?
Well, I mean, cool. I do firmly believe that I am an American, and I've had people say, "Don't call yourself a citizen because you're setting yourself up." I don't understand. I mean, I understand.
Yeah, I'm not playing any of those kind of like word games, like.
Yeah, no. I believe that, but I think what happened with the people that believed in the Tea Party is they're low information voters who really believe the propaganda.
But there's low information voters just on the other side. I mean, you can go to Twitter, Reddit, anything, and I mean, I'll tell you what. Yesterday, I read something where people were saying that it was totally unfair that they're not allowing 16-year-olds to vote because that will put Bernie in. And the problem is rich old white men who don't want to pay taxes. Well, number one, I'm not rich. Number two, I can very, very well. Number three, I'm in my 40s, so I guess I'm old.
You're not old.
I don't want to pay any more taxes.
Me either.
Honest to God,
my goal.
I do not want a 15-year-old who communicates through emojis and text speak making decisions about who's going to lead the nation.
Look, if you look into where these stories, we are all victims of severe propaganda, Michael. This is the thing. When we get into it, this is part of what I talk about on this show. We have to look at what we're being fed in the so-called news, because it's really just meant to keep us out of the system and keep us from believing that we can affect a change in our own lives. And that's partly why this conflict, this is why Sanders and Trump are the none of the, I agree with you completely. They are the none of the above candidates. I mean, and it really does get down to, I mean, you said, Democrats want everybody to have an abortion. That's actually a really egregious statement. And, Republicans want everybody to have a gun. I think what you're saying is what they want people to have the rights to have a gun and the rights to have an abortion. And I don't believe that those two things are disconnected. That's the only
choices they want you to be able to make.
But look, it's not even about that. That's the choice that they're putting on us. But those two statements are kind of the same thing. We have a right to control our own lives and to defend our own lives. And that is...
If those two statements are kind of the same thing, and the great big banks donate to both sides of the aisle. This whole thing is just a big scam. It don't matter if it's Trump. It don't matter if it's Sanders. It don't matter if it's vermin supreme. And I totally back the pony-based economic system. But it's going to be Hillary in the end. I mean, for Christ's sake, she's having the WikiLeaks table show that she's having some sort of intimate dealings with Lynn Foster de Rothschild, the wife of Evelyn de Rothschild. There's like 42 kind of like kissy face emails back and forth between them. She's the one.
I think that they believe it's going to be her, but they're going to be really stunned unless they absolutely change every vote. I know for a fact.
Do you think that Bernie Sanders has been shafted through the caucusing process and this free election?
Not even just the caucusing through the free elections. They've scrubbed the voter rolls in New York. They scrubbed 220,000 people.
So if they're doing everything they can to stick it to him in this pregame situation, when we get to the championship, what makes you think that they're going to now we got to follow the rules? All the time for screwing around is over. Now we got to pay attention to what really matters. Somebody get me a copy of the Constitution.
I guess maybe I'm hoping that Anonymous will unhack the machines like they did in the last election. When Karl Rove had his meltdown on Fox News, he could not believe it. He actually made Megyn Kelly go back in there to confirm the results. And the reality is it was because it came out a few days later that Anonymous re-switched the voting machines back to what they should have been and refused to let the Republicans steal that state. I mean,
this is wrong. We shouldn't have hacked voting machines. And you know what? We're going to have the United States Supreme. We're going to have the Supreme Court decide on it because these machines were hacked.
Well, you know what, Michael? I'll give you this. I think we're hitting a critical mass. If they're going to continue with this, and I'm not saying I disagree with you that they're going to steal it. I mean, I am not, and I think
it's already stolen in my mind. It's already stolen. We're just kind of watching.
Just towards total open totalitarianism.
I think we're headed to war, and we're headed to big war. Well, yesterday they just said that now women are it's mandatory. They have to register for selective service. They got to sign up for the draft. Yes, way.
Can I say about?
Yeah, we're headed to war.
Okay. I'm listening. I mean, I'm not an authority in all your politics down there, but what I am...
We got such a joke with politics down here. Be glad you're not an authority.
But you know what I think, Michael, about war is that the way I see it being fought is people that have chemo IVs in their jugulars, the soldiers are going to be on the front lines and they're going to be treated for cancer before they're going to be treated for bullet wounds. Because that we're facing... down a monster, this nuclear monster, and I think
I'd love to give you just an aside to this. My brother's in the United States military. He's been in the United States military for over 20 years now. Yesterday, they were informed that he now has to pay for his health care. He has to pay $600 a year for his. Yeah, wow. That's right. So now, if my brother gets shot in combat, he has to pay a deductible before they pull the bullet out of his ass.
Incredible. That is outrageous. Out-bloody racist.
Whose idea was that? Where did that come from?
That came from the machine.
Yeah.
The machine that is running us all into the ground, and it doesn't matter who. So, I mean, I may have like a very twisted view of this, Lonnie, and I mean, I truly listen to your show as often as I can. I find you to be highly refreshing. I think you're wonderful because you'll take my completely obnoxious opinion and like give it some sort of credence.
You're not obnoxious. It's it's your points are valid, and I actually you give me pause for thought about how I have myself been propagandized. So let
me throw one more at you. If you've been propagandized, you like to say that Trump is a racist. How can you reconcile Trump being a racist in just his statements, which technically really aren't even racist, but how can you reconcile the accusation of him being a racist with his actions of actually opening up all of his resorts and golf clubs to minorities that were previously unavailable to visit any resorts or golf clubs prior to that?
What does that mean? I don't understand.
That means like, okay, so like there's a golf course and it's, It's the stereotypical old white men, no blacks, no Jews, no Irish, no dogs.
That's actually
right?
illegal in our country.
It still happens. It's a private club. It's a private club. You can't tell me what I can and can't do in my private club.
Okay.
So there's many clubs like that. Trump opened up his resorts to people of all faith, creeds, colors, and he is the racist.
Well, you know, it's funny that you talk about this. This is what I was thinking, because I had a conflict with this. I do believe that Trump is a pretty bigoted misogynist, just in his general attitude towards things with his comments. But in my conversation with myself about this reconciling, my one major complaint about Bernie Sanders, and in fact every single candidate, is their complete ignoring of the destruction. Right now the Gazans are being bombed the crap out of by Israel. Nobody's even reporting on the fact that Gaza is being bombarded.
They're not ever going to report on anything that has to do with Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take a look, everybody spoke in front of AIPAC. Everybody tried to be more Jewish than the last guy, except for the Jew who didn't show up because, well, you know, it doesn't really matter. He's always going to go back to the home team anyways. But Ted Cruz out and out said Palestine doesn't exist.
Right. And it doesn't. Have you
Trump,
looked at Google
Trump
Maps?
said he will drop the hugest bomb on Palestine.
I know.
Hillary says that immediately she's going to go to war with Iran. And Kasich is still from Ohio.
And Bernie Sanders has actually said that Netanyahu needs to revise his attitude. And that is
revise his attitude. If somebody said that Hitler needed to revise his attitude, they'd be considered some sort of Nazi, anti-Semite, member of the Condor Legion, blah, blah, blah.
Well, look,
revise his attitude is a very, very nice thing to say, but it means nothing.
It is, but do you know how much of a rumble that took? Nobody says anything about Netanyahu. He took I don't remember his words.
I'll tell you how much of a rumble it takes. We have just offered Israel $5 billion a year for the next 15 years, and they are turning it down because it's not enough, and they're going to wait for the next president who will invariably give them more money.
Yeah. I hear you, and I appreciate your point of view on this one. And you know what? Like, I actually, in my heart of hearts, I have to admit, I somewhat agree with you. I mean, the reason I am voting for Sanders is just because I'm not going to lay down and let them roll over us. And not that I believe that it's actually going to be effective, but it's like, why am I on the radio show 3 times a week doing this deal? I mean, who knows how many people listen to it?
I think you're on the radio because you want people to start thinking.
I do, and I want people to start.
And you know what? If you get 100 people who can think, that's a lot better than 100 voters.
And 100 people who can listen to different points of view. Like, I have no qualm with you calling up and having a complete opposite view, or, you know, I mean, whatever it is that you think. We must have these conversations about rational thinking in order to get ourselves back. I mean, we are so far off track in this country, emotionally and intellectually. It's frightening. We are poisoning people in many cities right now. And I'm stunned that nobody's out in the streets protesting that St. Louis is being poisoned, that Flint, Michigan that New York City, Turkey Point, Hanford.
I think the big problem with the nuclear poison in the United States, and I'm going to single out the nuclear poison because I think it's the one that causes the most confusion amongst regular Americans, is a lot of people still think like, all right, so there's this nuclear reactor and nuclear stuff goes on, and then it throws radiation and nuclear down the electric lines, and then it comes to your house and it makes electricity. They have no idea how it works, right? Like it's just this thing that's just piping like radiation to your house. And don't stand too close to your outlet.
Uh-huh.
They have no clue, and I mean, just isn't. I live in a fairly rural area, and I was right after Fukushima happened. I was talking to a friend of mine who's he doesn't have the same worldview I have. I guess a nice way to say it. And I was asking him about nuclear power, and there's a nuclear plant not too far from me, about 100 miles from me, and I told him exactly what nuclear power does, and he kind of like, that's the craziest way to boil water ever.
Yeah.
So,
But it's not
I mean,
about boiling water. It's about war.
No.
It's about.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Everything's about war because war has to be financed. And war destroys what you just financed, so you have to finance something to replace it. And the bank wins in the end as usual, and it doesn't matter. Put whoever you want in, the bank will kill them off.
Well, I can't say.
I mean, that's why we deal with Saudi Arabia, right? That's why we've given most favored nation trading status to China since the early 90s. When we know actively that China is working to destroy the nation through economic means, if not by overt military and espionage. They just copy everything and make it and sell it cheaper.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they also own good portions of our country too. That's it.
They just bought Radisson hotels yesterday.
I mean, we have sold off major portions of our country to the Chinese completely. It's, and I think that I get your message, and I think that maybe you might be correct that really, in order for everything to equalize itself, to get back to a sense of humanity and being human, we're going to have we're going to have a massive catastrophic.
I prefer if you call it the cleansing fires of justice.
Okay. The cleansing fires of justice.
I love your show.
Thank you.
Thomas, I'm really sorry for taking up all your time. I totally appreciate what you're doing, Lonnie, and please keep doing it.
All righty. Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate the conversation.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
That was pretty great conversation, I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael, for calling, because this is the kind of stimulating conversation. Oh, I think I just called him. Yikes. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that, folks.
No, he has a very strong opinion. He has a very strong character. You can feel there's a determined person on the other end of that voice.
Well, thank God he's got some blood in his veins. I mean, we need that, and we need that. That's what's lacking here. Is people are just like so lacking in courage and the willingness to just say what they believe and what they think.
You know what I noticed too is, like, when you're talking to him and you disagree, he's not fanatical. This is an interesting thing, that you can have strong opinions but not be fanatical, right? And I think this is quite often that gets us into hot water. And my footnote to all of this, in my conversations with you, Lonnie, that we are terribly traumatized right now. We live the age of fission isn't just like, oh, geez, there's like chain reactions all over. Oh, it's an age of trauma, Lonnie. We're in an age of trauma. And when I hear both of you discuss this, and I have to tell you that the underlying platform here is going to be cancer, like war, literally. How can you fight a war when teenagers are getting cancer? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's you don't have a fighting army. At some point, this is going to have such a huge backlash that whatever that tradition of cleansing, what Michael calls cleansing, will be not through war, but through the diseases that we're going to head into. I mean, inevitably, I can't see any way out of this. I
think we're there. See, this is what they have done effectively with the whitewashing. I mean, we don't really have news. We don't have journalism. We have propaganda, basically. We just have propaganda because
we're traumatized, Lonnie.
Not only that, we're sick. Cancers are increasing. People are dying.
That's right. That's part of the trauma, that you're afraid. You go to your doctor for a checkup, and of course you're sitting there thinking, geez, do I have it or don't I have it? This is on people's mind every day. This is like between surviving and thinking, oh, I'm going to get sick. And I think we're traumatized. And this is something that, how do you get out of that trauma? You can't make a clear decision in a state like that. It's impossible. And your leaders down there represent our trauma. I mean, I look at these people and all of them is like, how do we choose? How can we choose? It's like a single person. They're going to do something. We need to all collectively somehow be able to rectify this. I I have some thoughts on that, but
Me too. I actually, in more ways than one, I think I agree with Michael that it's almost a way. But I'm doing it just because. It's that faith that I don't want to give up. I don't want to just say, okay, it doesn't matter, and I'm just not going to. I'm going to wait for the collapse. I personally would rather not see a collapse and see if we can massage this into something that is more humane. And this is my feeling about the Sanders campaign. I am only going to write in Bernie Sanders' name if he does not run as an independent. And I believe that if everybody writes in Bernie's name, we would have a Sanders candidate. Now, I think he would be assassinated. That's the kind of dichotomy. Like, if we go against the bankers, I think Michael's right. Like, whatever. They're just not going to put up with it. They don't have to.
Isn't it true that every single president virtually has been either shot or killed at some point or other, except maybe Jimmy Carter? I don't know.
What do you mean? No.
Well, all presidents in the history of your country have either been shot or killed.
No.
What are you
talking about? That's a.
Okay. You just
Clinton never got shot. Clinton never got shot.
Up to Reagan.
Up to Reagan. Let's see. Eisenhower did not get shot. No, I think that's not an accurate statement.
Yeah, you'll see. I researched this. You'll see that many of your presidents have either been shot
Many have been shot. In fact, I have a really esoteric old book about Harding. Harding is an unknown president, and he was actually killed by there's a huge mystery inside the White House surrounding his presidency and his death. And actually, this book, it's a biography. I think it was written right around his time. It's an old book, and it basically was pointing right to the bankers killing him off.
Are you ready for the list? Can I give you the list?
Yeah.
Are you ready? Okay. Presidents assassinated. Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, Kennedy. Attempts. Jackson, Lincoln, Howard Taft, Roosevelt, Hoover, Truman, Kennedy, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan.
Wait. Come back. Nixon was not shot. You're talking about
assassination attempts. This is a list of attempted assassinations on presidents, and the presidents that were killed were Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, and Kennedy. And then you have these are a lot of presidents that somebody tried to get rid of them, terribly.
Well, it probably has to do with the bankers. That's what I think. It's pretty evident that our country is run by the bankers, period.
And it's a violent history. It's a very violent history.
Extremely violent.
It's scary.
We're the genocide. This is why our country could turn our back on the Gazans, because what Israel's done to the Gazans is nothing that we've done to the Native Americans in this country. Nothing. Yeah, and we're still murdering them. We are dumping uranium tailings on Native American lands without regard. It is an outrage. When the word, the famous, the phrase of you're either with us or with the enemy or whatever, whole kind of concept, this terrorist concept, I find, in my own life that people that are accusing others are actually doing what they're accusing others of. Yes. This is like a reverse psychology thing, so that you hide your own terrorism by accusing somebody else of terrorism, right? It's exactly like in that book, The Common Secret. It was written by the first OBGYN that worked for Planned Parenthood. What she outlined and what she talked about was her journey into how she got into being an OBGYN who supported women's rights for abortion. One thing she wrote in there was, it became very apparent when people started protesting these Planned Parenthood organizations, every single month, that they were there working. They had to sneak in, change their plates. At least once a month, one of those women from one of those protest lines would secretly make an appointment to go in and get an abortion, and go in and apologize for having put them in that position, and ask them if they would please help her have an abortion. Mm-hmm. So it is really, I think that might just be the human nature. You know what I mean? Like, what did Shakespeare say? Methinks thou dost protest too much. You know what I mean? Like, really? It's that's just kind of the human nature of it all. But, I really believe that human beings are in the process of cleansing, our spiritual cleansing right now. Like, we have had enough of the war faction, and unfortunately, it's going to cost our planet gravely to be cleansed of it. And I
We're
mean,
going to be forced into it, Lonnie. It won't be
yeah.
We're being forced into it. I mean, look, in my own life, I only know about myself. I'm an expert on me as best as I can be. And I changed when I was always a contrarian. And when Fukushima happened, something just kind of flew off my eyelids. It's like I couldn't close my eyes anymore virtually. It's like that feeling that it was forced on me. Now, I may be a little bit more sensitive because the nature of my work is contrarian. So I look for the opposition that I need to fight. I look for that part that is not working in a way. It's like I make a painting, and you sit in front of a painting for days and weeks sometimes, figuring out why isn't it right. Why isn't this right? And it spills over into everything else for me. It's like, why isn't this working? It's
kind of like being a juggler. I'm a juggler, right? So this is one of the funny things about being a juggler. When you juggle,
I still want you to do that on a YouTube, please. I'd like to see that.
Okay, I will. But when you're juggling, it's a funny thing because you teach yourself all these different ways to juggle, right? And it's the most interesting hobby because, a baseball, a guy who plays baseball or football, they learn how to throw the ball perfectly and yay, they're satisfied. With a juggler, as soon as you learn a trick, you're like, okay, how can I make this more difficult?
How can I keep more balls in the air?
Yeah, or how can I move my arm this way and let's see what happens if I throw it here.
Right. Yeah. You know what? That's a natural desire and instinct. To sort of create adversity for ourselves to overcome, in a sense, right?
That is why I actually taught myself to juggle. And when I was 30, I thought, you know what? Jugglers have to continue to challenge themselves. And I thought that to be successful as a juggler, you have to accept failure. It's just part of it. And that is part of success, is accepting failure. People that fail and quit can't be successful. Everybody fails. This is why this thing with Bernie, we cannot give up, because the reason that the people who are oppressing us and have their thumb on our throats and are strangling us is because many people have given up, and we cannot give up because failure is part of success. It's just part of it. That's why I taught myself to juggle, so I could really grasp that concept. And it's been a really good guiding light, because when the adversity comes along and things happen, things aren't so easy, you just go, okay, you know what? How can I do it better? What do I need to do to get to the goal? And you just keep going. And that's what makes humans successful.
You know what? I would say to that, another human trait that I find quite admirable is the ability to bear frustration. That each individual has levels of, tolerances, some more, some others, but this fundamental ability to bear frustration when something isn't quite right, not to give up, as you say, is actually very noble. It's a wonderful thing. And I just wanted, before we're done here, I've been having conversations with people about population. I think this fits all into this, and how there are so many people on the planet. You know what I think is going on with 7 billion people on the planet? There is a huge surge. I have a romance with eternity, and I believe there is a huge surge of souls wanting to help. This is my thought about how many people are on the planet right now, and I think we're in a position with this kind of intent and intention. If I'm right that eternity is something, I'd like to still have a symposium on that, but I feel that every person, like you say on your show when you introduce it, every person is so important in this, what's going on right now. And why do you think there are 7 billion of us right now? Why? Never before, as far as we know, have there been this many people.
Right. It's because we have big issues. Yeah.
Yes. And we need everybody to add to this, somehow their own version of this understanding, and what I always fall back on, to begin to really care, which will change things drastically, dramatically, because we're traumatized now. We can't care because we're traumatized by everything.
I agree with you. We have been. That's why I say, like, we're like battered wives, and there's no battered wife shelter for us to go to. And part of that, getting past that, because I don't know. I think I've shared this before. I grew up in extreme violence, right? And so to navigate, and there was no shelters for us in the 60s. Like, there was no place. You just sucked it up and took it. But part of what you have to do is remember your humanity, and to really, this is what got me through, is I knew from the time I was a small child that the universe favored me, that I was here on purpose, that I was fundamental. I mean, no matter the chaos that went around me, I had this sense of feeling behind me that I was put here on purpose for a reason. And I think that when people have that sense of feeling that it matters how you respond in life, you have the courage to face whatever it is that comes your way. And I think it's a really important. I think that's partly why we have this whole. They are using all these electronics to make people feel. I mean, kids can't even spell or do basic math because they have electronics. And in our culture, those are valued skills. So those, on a subconscious level, people get the message that you're just not that valuable. You know what I mean? It's an interesting dichotomy, but you know what? We can stand up against that. This is where I'm about. This is why I really appreciate Michael's comments. I don't entirely disagree with them about the fact that it's all got to collapse before we can find something better.
The guy has a heart beating in his chest. You can
yes, and he's a humanitarian. You can hear that he loves life and he loves people. I mean, and that's what we need to do, is encourage each other, regardless of how we feel politically, because the politics is really just a cover sheet. It doesn't really matter. What's beneath it is the humanity.
And believe in ourselves, because, in my own work as a painter, I'm a late bloomer. I've been working over 40 years, almost 45 years now, on my art. And I'm a late bloomer. I didn't come to my work in a strong way until about 10, 15 years ago. And I think, if we persist and we need to believe in ourselves. It's maybe not right at this moment, but keep going, right? Just keep developing that expertise of who that person is inside each one of us.
Right. Well, you know what? I actually studied success 30 years ago when I first left my ex-husband with my girls. When I taught myself to juggle, I'm like, how do I get successful in my life? I read a book that said basically most successful people make their mark after they are 40. People who make their money before they're 40 generally lose it and continue to struggle. But as humans are slow creatures. Like, we grow up, it takes us a long time. Male adults don't actually hit maturity till they're 30. So we're a slow breed. We're like elephants. We're a very slow breed.
I just hit it like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Exactly. So we got a lot to do. Tom, I'm going to end here. We have a minute left on the radio. I really want to thank you for joining us. I thought I'd give you an opportunity to share your website so people can see your magnificent artwork. Why don't you give us your website?
Ackerman-artist.com, Ackerman with 2 N's.
Okay, well, that is really awesome. I appreciate you, this little impromptu thing, and thank you for joining us on Call-In Friday, Tom. And
anytime. Love talking to you. You know that. We'll talk later again, too. I want to talk to you about some stuff.
Okay, thanks for joining us. And
honey, you take care.
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Well, in these last 30 seconds, listeners, I want to thank you for joining us, and thank you, Michael, for your kind words about our show. And really, we really do appreciate your support. I encourage everybody to put your courage feet on. Do your homework, find out the facts. Let's not regurgitate the lies. And if you read a story that sounds egregious, look into it a little bit deeper, because there's lots of propagandists out there trying to twist and mess with our heads. So, we will talk to you guys on Monday. We are going to be interviewing C.D. Stelzer from St. Louis. Put your courage feet on. We'll talk to you later.